And the first item on the agenda is apologies. Liz, we have some, I think.
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Kevin Griffiths and Erica Kirshner.
Okay, thank you. What I haven't done, of course, is welcome everybody to the meeting, which I should have done, and I apologise for that. Should have put that on there. And welcome you to this first meeting of the Child and Family Services Scrutiny Panel for the newly formed council. A warm welcome, obviously, to Julie and David when he comes. Any other officers come in today?
I think I was hoping that Claire Edwards would join us to observe. She's a newly appointed senior manager in my area, but I think she's got caught up in a safeguarding issue, so I'm afraid she probably won't be able to make it. But we haven't got any other officers to present reports today, but there will be the future next meeting. There will be.
Okay, that's fine. And we also have to welcome a new cabinet member as well, in Louise. So very warm welcome to you as well, and we will always be pleased to see you in these meetings whenever you can attend, and we're always glad to see the cabinet member.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Item 2 is disclosures of personal prejudice or interest. I don't know if anybody's got anything they want to declare. Doesn't seem to be. Item 3 is prohibition of the whipped votes and declarations of party whips. Item 4, minutes of previous meeting. You all had a chance to have a good read of them. I don't know if there's anything that you particularly picked up in them. In that sense, I got to say I didn't. That needs to be coming back on, and certainly with the letters as well. Anybody got any comments they want to make, or are you happy with them? Okay. Hello. Oh, David's in. Hello, David. Good afternoon, and a warm welcome to you as well. Sorry, I didn't see you coming in because I haven't got one in front of me.
Yeah, apologies, Chair, and apologies for not being in the room.
No, that's fine. Pleased to see you anyway, David. That moves us on very quickly to public question time. I don't think we've had any, have we, Alice?
No, Chair.
No. So that's very simple. And on to item 6, which is the role of the Child and Family Services Performance Panel. I'm not quite sure what to say to this because obviously there's quite a long write-up there. But as I said earlier, this is quite an experienced panel in this sense, and it would be invidious of me to try and tell people what they should be doing in that respect, I think. It is an experienced panel and fully understands the importance of this role. I think it wouldn't do any harm to have some more members here because we are a bit light. Now, if you can think of anybody who might be interested, then we will contact them certainly, or Liz will, and we'll take it from there. The fact that it is experienced obviously has been a major strength going forward, and hopefully will ensure we continue to hold the department to account in a constructive manner. Not too harsh, hopefully, but that sort of critical friend. I think it's the way we've done it in the previous years. For Louise's benefit, I will say we do have a link to the corporate parenting board, and we do expect to get an annual report. Be very interested to see that and see how that comes. And really, that's about as much as I think I need to say in this, because anything else that's in there, most of all the members will know full well, I think, and it would going to be superfluous for me to say it unless anybody's got any questions or want to make any comments. Okay. In that case, we will move on to item 7. The overview of Child and Family Services in Swansea. I'm not quite sure who's going to present this to start off with. Are you going to start it off, Louise, and then yeah, David and Julie, or whichever order, whichever suits you? So, Louise, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, panel, for inviting me here today. So, as the Chair pointed out, obviously it's a new portfolio to me. I've got, as cabinet member for care services, I've also got part of adult services in my portfolio as well. But also working closely with Councillor Hayley Gwilliam and Councillor Alison Pugh as well. Hayley particularly has got a bit more of the sort of early help and the youth preventative and some of the youth and early years in her portfolio. But I'm not going to sort of talk through the report too much. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read that. Just pick out some of the key points, and then Julie and Dave can chip in if I miss anything in particular or pick stuff up afterwards. Obviously, I think as we all know, as you know, we talked about in full council last week, there are a lot of significant pressures on the service, particularly in terms of recruitment of social workers and in placements. But as the report points out, you know, there in 1.3, the key statutory requirements are all being carried out. Children are being seen on time. The assessments are being completed in timescale. Timely safeguarding responses are being provided, and the reviews of statutory plans are taking place when they need to. And also there is, you know, good performance shown in the August report there, that more families are being supported through early help. I'll pick that up in a minute. That there are fewer children on the child protection register compared to this time last year. Again, the number of looked after children remaining in the low 480s, as it has done for some time, again lower than last year. And there is good practice being shown in multi-agency reviews, and staff are receiving that regular supervision and support. But obviously it is a very difficult period coming out of COVID and no let up really. So hugely grateful to the efforts of Dave, Julie and all the staff in the department. The priorities continue to be based around prevention and early intervention. You can see there we're talking about the targeted support that's being given to parents and carers in the early help hubs. A big focus on parental conflict and trying to avoid that kind of relationship breakdown, which could lead to some more statutory intervention later on. And the growing area of responding to neurodiversity, so autism, ADHD, you know, other sort of emotional and behavioural issues. Parental advocacy being developed. Julie and I were just talking about that at the start of before the start of the meeting. Some, you know, really important work going on there in terms of peer support between families and carers in helping them engage with child and family services to better support their families. The development of the youth service then through the 5 early help hubs, and again very much responding to what young people themselves want, perhaps moving away slightly from that traditional youth club kind of approach to more outreach responsive work across Swansea, and good work going on there. In terms of placements, obviously that's placement sufficiency is a very key priority for us. In 2.5 there's a list of the things that are being done to try and alleviate this situation. Targeted recruitment of foster carers, a new regional model of care for complex young people with the RPB. Julie, you're leading on that, aren't you, with the West Glamorgan RPP? Talking with providers about how we can work to meet the Welsh Government agenda around elimination of profit, and making sure also that children and young people who are living in Swansea currently are supported to continue to do so after they leave care, because obviously they've developed, they might not be from here originally, but they've developed links into this area. So how can we keep that provision for them locally? Expanding local and regional supported accommodation for 16+, including the growing numbers of unaccompanied asylum seeking children. And also, of course, our in-house residential provision is growing with the aim of 4 homes. We've got our existing home in Tynant and 2 properties. One has been purchased already, and then the other one is going to be registered as emergency provision, and that is almost complete. Then finally, third priority is obviously our workforce. Again, a list of things there in 2.6 of what we're doing to try and support and develop our workforce and try and get over some of the issues there are with shortages. A really important piece of work going on around recruiting what we're calling alternatively qualified staff to support social workers. So to make sure that the work of social workers is really focused on those requirements that they have to do, but there are excellent staff then to support them who may not have those social work qualifications, but are definitely, you know, very good staff in other ways to do those support roles. A lot of work been going on with the council's employability hub. You might have seen the sort of recruitment activities down in the hub there in the quadrant, and hopefully a few local people coming through that route as well. And then very much about growing our own staff. We've got 11 people on the Open University social work course, so to try and develop our own social workers and keep them within the authority then. And then leading on from that, the Social Work Academy, where newly qualified staff coming into the service can be supported and nurtured and have that progressive career pathway. And of course, very important to develop a reward and recognition scheme, and to make sure well-being of the staff, especially after everything that they've gone through over the last few years, is taken into consideration, and the ongoing pressures. So that's sort of in a nutshell the sort of situation as we are there. And then I won't go into too much detail any further. There's the wellbeing report after that. I don't know, Julie, if you want to pick anything up that I've missed, or pick out some highlights from the August report.
I wonder, Chair, if it would be helpful for me to just walk you through the report.
Yeah.
You'll notice it's much more detailed than the last one that you had.
Yes.
And so the reason for the last few not being as detailed was the transition to the new information system, WICIS. So I'm pleased to say that we've now been able to build the performance report so we can get the data that we need, and we've enhanced the report to cover a much wider elements of the service than perhaps you've seen previously. So if you don't mind, I just would like to take you through. I won't go over every page in detail. I'll just point out what's been added so that you can, if you have an opportunity then to think about that going forward. It's much more comprehensive.
I was quite impressed with this.
Good. We've had very positive.
Again.
Yes, we've had very positive feedback. I had the 6th monthly formal catch up with our local authority lead inspector 2 weeks ago, and he remarks on the progress of this report, and very pleased to see that we've taken on board the findings from the last inspection that we had a couple of years ago. So he's seen that in a very positive vein as well. I can see how we've fully developed much further our quality assurance framework and mechanisms. So it's good news for us. So I won't take up a lot of time, but I just thought because it's such a change, it might be helpful just to take you through. So on the contents page, if you click on the colour boxes, and it will just take you to those parts of the report. So it's a little bit interactive, which if you've got a particular interest. So that's something that our learning and innovation team have introduced if you wanted to do that. Louise has talked through the highlights which are contained in my overview. The additional thing that I would say, that in addition to what Louise has talked about, is in relation to caseloads. We haven't included caseload information in the report as of yet because we can't run it off WICIS. But what I would say is that although the overall numbers are within what we would call an expected range for particularly the more complex cases, we're very mindful that particularly within our area teams, we have less experienced staff than we would normally have had because of the social worker recruitment crisis. So we're very keen that we develop a caseload policy which reflects the different levels of need across the service, but doesn't, so that for looked after children it would be necessarily a little bit different than it might be for child protection and court social workers, for example. So once we've refined that and we're more confident that actually the data that we're running off is reflective of the levels of need and complexity, then we can start to add that data into this report. So I'll just run you through. So the other thing that I'm really pleased that's added in, if you look at page 4 of the report, of the performance report, which is page 31 of the report that you've got, under single point of contact, we started to introduce some graphs there. And what that allows us to do is to look at trends over time. So, and we have what was called an upper control limit and a lower control limit. So peaks and troughs. So if we go outside of that, it's telling us that something's changed. So what might have caused that change? And then allows us to interrogate that a little bit more.
So it's an advanced warning system.
Yes, absolutely. So it's really helpful for managers on the front line, and also strategically for us to look back on that and think, well, is there something we need to look into more here? Do we need to think about our resources? Are they in the right place? Is there something different in the system? So it might not just be local authority, it might be other partner agencies. So it's really introduced a level of sophistication, I guess, in relation to us understanding our service as best we can in the wider context of the system. So in terms of contacts that are coming in, you'll see it's quite up and down, but it's within the predicted range at the moment. So that's something that everybody's. So we're looking to introduce those sort of charts in as many parts of the service as is purposeful and useful. But I think the front door and early help in particular is where we focus those energies. Emergency duty team on page 6, on page 33, that was not in the report before, so that's an addition for us to include for you. And that emergency duty team covers adults and children's, but with the information here is just for children's services. A separate report goes in for adults. So there's nothing remarkable in terms of section child protection investigations. Domestic abuse hub, I think, is a welcome addition, so we can see specifically what's going in relation to domestic abuse. The thing of interest for us is if you look at number of contacts closed for information only, what that means is that we're actually getting really good at signposting and helping people to think about other services and support that's available to them in the wider community. And similarly, we've introduced one of those charts in Domestic Abuse Hub. Early Help Hubs is a new entry as well to the report. Really pleasing that that's in there. You'll notice that there's still some areas to be developed. That's on page 9 and page 36. But what we do know is that we've introduced something called family referrals in Early Help Hubs, which really helped to ensure that the system supports practice rather than practice being driven by the system. So it's streamlined the input from the workers, meaning they can spend more time with families and children. What we can see is there's an increase in demand for early help, but we're still working with the charts because of the introduction of the family referral. You can't really compare like for like at the moment, but what we do know is that we are certainly seeing an increase in demand for early help, and we are looking to introduce from September our early help workers spending more time on a regular basis in schools to work inside and along school staff to help in relation to support at the earliest stage, but also is it right to refer in to social care at this point? So getting a better understanding of our continuum of need. So it's really pleasing to see how that partnership is working and helping and developing with our colleagues in education. And we're starting to capture wellbeing assessments. Family wellbeing team, this is part of the front door, but that's an area that is yet to be developed, but that's a team that helps prevent this escalation into statutory intervention, works alongside both early help but also the integrated safeguarding hub to help keep families at that lower level of intervention. And the integrated safeguarding hub is something new that's been introduced as well.
The caseload with early help seems to be rising.
Yes, in terms of the demands rising, and we did have over the because we're had challenges recruit backfilling posts, we did start to have a bit of a waiting list. Well, families waiting to be allocated. We were making contact, but it's actually following that through. But what we've done in response to that is we've introduced options for group work. So rather than waiting and not having any contact, going into schools direct. But also, Louise mentioned the work in the quadrant. So we have gone there and we had 172 applications for support worker posts. So we know that by using those different approaches, we can actually attract people in those alternatively qualified posts, and then more able to fill those posts than perhaps we were able to previously. So it's been a very welcome addition to our recruitment strategy. So it's really pleasing to see. The other thing I wanted to point out on page 14, which is page 41 of the bundle, is child missing, exploited, trafficked. So this is where we've presented to a previous scrutiny meeting the findings of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, and one of their recommendations was around improvements about collection and understanding of the data. So this is part of that improvement. We are developing a separate, more detailed report that will look into that in a bit more detail with police data and other data sets. But for our service, what this is showing us is that we are picking up more contextual safeguarding referrals and working directly with our partner agencies with children in relation to the location rather than and the issues around them and creating safety for them in those areas.
I'm going to show my ignorance now and ask exactly what you mean by contextual.
So contextual, it means the environment within. So it could be the seafront, it could be outside the library in an area, it could be the bus station. It's where young people and children are at rather than in the home. So rather than thinking about the risks normally in terms of child protection, it's risks within the home. It's called intrafamilial harm, whereas this is the harm that maybe they're coming across because they're out and about in communities. So it's different parts of the communities and understanding that context when they're in those different parts of communities, and they are very different in relation to perhaps the seafront as to perhaps outside a library in the local community. And that's where we work really well with our youth workers, community safety colleagues, housing colleagues, and also businesses to help create safety for those children, young people in that community, and work with and alongside the young people themselves. So that's really good for us in relation to safeguarding, but in a different sort of way, I guess, than perhaps we've previously talked about here.
Yeah. Okay.
That's been recognised nationally in terms of Swansea. We're one of the few local authorities that we're working with the University of Bedfordshire in Wales around this approach. So I'll have more to say about that in future meetings, hopefully. So the other thing I wanted to point out that you wouldn't have seen before is, I'm just going to the right page. So we're on page 19, which is page 46 of the bundle. We're starting to include qualitative auditing. There's an example there of deregistration at first review. So children that have been on the child protection register, deregistered at first review. So rather than just giving you numbers and data, we're actually looking at the quality of practice and doing that in partnership with other agencies and not just social care and social services staff. And it's really pleasing to see that they're actually engaging partners in those conversations and helping them to understand what we mean by significant harm and evidence around that, and then whether we should deregister or not, or actually go to initial conferences, helping their understanding of thresholds, and also taking a strengths-based approach to conversations in conference. That was something that also our CRW lead inspector commented on, was the inclusion of qualitative information this time. The other thing that we've included in is around an appreciative inquiry that we did on page 50, which is page 23 of the actual report itself, where that's about talking. I think the previous scrutiny panel, we shared an appreciative inquiry in a closed session, talking to a parent in particular. And this is a young person's experience of receiving our service. Of course you can. Oh, sorry, I didn't notice. Oh, yes.
Mike, have you got a question?
I've got several questions, but happy to leave it till the end if that's okay.
Yeah.
Or I'm happy to give them now, but it might sort of detract from Julie's presentation otherwise.
I'm happy to carry on if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We're doing it at the end then.
Yeah, we're nearly at the end now. So the other big addition is fostering and adoption. There's a whole section on that which previously wouldn't have been in the report. And this is really important for us as a service in relation to one of the priorities that Louise mentioned around our sufficiency duty, having more foster carers that are what we call in-house, and children can live in a home but also in Swansea and not have to live either outside of Swansea or in a what we call an independent fostering agency. So it's good to bring some visibility to the progress of that service as part of our wider improvement plan. And also included in there are children subject to special guardianship orders and child arrangement orders. So as part of our drive for children to remain living within their family, it's bringing some visibility to that as well. So they're no longer looked after. They may have been for a while, but now they're living with their family but continuing to be supported by the local authority. So foster workers, that's about the fostering. And the other thing I wanted to just point out was the adoption service is also featured in our report as well. I know you do receive separate reports around adoption, but we're going to routinely include highlight data for you to see around our regional adoption service and what's happening in Swansea specifically.
I think just ask a quick question.
Of course.
Foster Swansea now become Foster Wales.
So, yes, it has. So when we launched, when Foster Wales launched last summer now it was, so every local authority fostering service. So we're now Foster Wales Swansea, so Neathport Talbot is Foster Wales Neathport Talbot. Okay. So it's just ensuring that we're all part of a bigger family of fostering services.
So they actually following our model in the first place then?
Well, I think it's probably fair to say that they've learned a lot from Swansea in relation to what works well and what's good practice in relation to fostering services.
That's right, isn't it, David?
Quite right, Chair.
Thank you.
And then finally, just to touch upon the other, in terms of prevention, early intervention, there's a whole section on support services. So this is a service that will work offering support, for example, therapeutic interventions for children, young people and their carers, but also working with parents in relation to drug use and alcohol use. So we're starting to then bring another component to making you aware of the whole offer across child and family services. I'll probably stop there, Chair, because I could go on for some time, as you can probably gather. But I'm so pleased that we've actually been able to develop the report in this way, and it continues to evolve, and we'll add more to it, and continues to bring the key highlights to scrutiny to share.
Yeah. As I said earlier, I was really quite impressed with this report because over the last 12, 18 months or so, what we were seeing has more or less dwindled to nothing. And certainly when we started on this journey, Sue will remember in particular that we worked very hard to start getting data together, not just the sort of monthly data, but certainly looking at trends, which we thought were far more important. So I'm really glad to see this coming back. I'm just going to say one little thing before I forget. The adoption service I actually saw on the Gower show this year. So they were looking for potential adopters, I think. So I had a little chat with them. But no, certainly I had a few questions, but I wasn't going to go into those in any depth unless anybody else wants to. I know Mike wants to come in. So at this point, Mike, perhaps you would like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Paxton. Just echo your comments in connection with the quality of the report and the way in which we can identify issues that may need to be explored. And it's all very well us getting the report, but I just wondered from Julie and Dave's point of view whether the additional detail has provided any further guidance, I suppose, for the department in terms of let's say sort of planning for the future and or allocation of resources where there may be some sort of areas which require additional resource. So that was the first question, but certainly welcome the way in which the report has developed. The second point, I think, is probably for Louise, if I could. Very interested in talking about the alternatively qualified staff. And probably showing my age now, but in the early 70s, I was in the personnel department at Cardiff Social Services, and we used to employ social work assistants. And I just wondered, in terms of how they're likely to be recruited, and also appropriate salary levels for the staff. I think we're all aware of the pressures that there are in recruiting care staff and actually care staff leaving the profession. So I wondered, how much flexibility we would have in terms of being able to make the package attractive, if I can put it like that, for them to join us as a service. And it's not just a question of salary. I don't think it's also a question of conditions of service and the ability to have flexible working hours as well. And the third point then was just in connection with the whole issue of referrals and raising concerns. We're aware and would expect that the professional services like police and teachers and the healthcare staff would be fully aware of what needs to happen if they come across any areas of concern or cases of concern. But I just wondered, one of the things that I've been doing as Lord Mayor is visiting food banks, for example, throughout the city, which are run tremendously by our volunteers, many of whom would not necessarily have any kind of background in health or social care, and might appreciate perhaps just a little bit of guidance in terms of what do they do if they come across a family where there might be an issue of concern. It might already be that that family has been referred through social services, so it would already be on your radar. But I wondered whether there's a scope for possibly doing something with food bank volunteers, because I think we're over 20 food banks now in Swansea, and just looking at the average number of volunteers, we could be talking of over 200 people potentially in touch with families who may need some form of support in this area. So sorry, it's three long questions, but as I said, just going back to what I said earlier, I think it's a really useful report. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Who wants to pick up on those first of all? Louise first?
Shall I?
Well, so should we go backwards? Because I feel like I can more confidently answer the 3, 2, 1 potentially. On the food banks issue, I was just thinking. I think SCVS do offer safeguarding training to volunteers, or at least to organisations. So it would be worth sort of picking this up, perhaps in the meetings that we have as part of the Third Sector Compact and things like that, to see what they do currently offer and if there's more that we can do to support them in rolling that out with their volunteers. Julie might want to add to that. With the alternatively qualified staff, again, you said it's more aimed at me, but I think I might have to defer to Dave and Julie to give a bit more details on the salary levels and the flexibility and things like that. But obviously we are a living wage employer and things like that, and we want to make sure that the staff are adequately supported and that it is attractive. And I think the people who are doing these roles find them very, very fulfilling and very interesting, and a really good way into the profession where they might not have previously thought that was something for them. And as is testament, they are going through to the OU courses and things like that, and hopefully we will be retaining them. But so I'll leave it to Julie to give you a bit more information on that side of it, and the question on the report as well.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks for the questions. So in terms of, I'll do it 1, 2, 3. So absolutely, we do use the data to inform and influence how we target resources. And a good example would be early help, where we identified referrals coming in, around a high number of referrals that were coming into the service around parental conflict, and also parents contacting us because they were looking for support with their children in terms of neurodiversity. So on the back of that, we were able to put in a bid for some grant funding to get some additional posts in that service. The other thing that we do is where we've had, we can see challenges and issues and pressures around placements, and foster carers in particular. That led us then to look at how we could put in some additional support for our foster carers around a therapeutic intervention. So that led us to create a therapeutic hub within that service, but making use of existing resources, but connecting to other parts of the service. So absolutely, it does help us to think about how we can make best use of existing resources, maybe refine and reshape, or perhaps create initiatives that would draw in external funding to the local authority. And I think that's one of the strengths of this enhanced report that we now have. So strategically and operationally, it's a very good tool. In relation to alternatively qualified staff, I think it's a real strength of Swansea is that we have an offer for staff who are not qualified social workers, opportunities and options to further their career, either to become a qualified social worker or perhaps go into our expanded therapeutic services. But also we're looking at career progression within the residential homes that we're expanding our portfolio for, and also early help, because we have staff that are very passionate about different parts of our service and want to be supported to stay and grow and develop in that service. So Deb Reid, who's our workforce development lead for social services, is helping us to develop a progression pathway for all parts of the service, not just qualified social workers. And of course, we're a fantastic employer to work for, who offer flexible and very agile working conditions, and we support wellbeing very positively and proactively. And staff recognise and feedback on that, and there's nothing that's as good as word of mouth. So the few agency staff that we do have, and we have a very low number of agency staff in Swansea, over half of them are talking to us about becoming permanent because they like working for Swansea Child and Family Services. So that's really positive to hear. The other thought to add to what Louise said about food banks is that there may be some value in enhancing that offer through CVS by offering a conversation to help them understand our continuum of need, which I think might help them to understand what to refer into social services and when to maybe have that conversation. So we can certainly take that away and have that follow up with CVS colleagues.
Thank you. I think it was that last point, Julie, if I may, just to, whilst they may be aware of the training on safeguarding, is actually what do they do if they've got a question or a concern, and I think for some of them it might be a question of being fearful of raising something which might not be there, so giving them the assurance that it's more important for them to raise the issue for it to be dealt with, but who do they go to?
And certainly one of the things we can do is maybe connect them to their early help hubs, because we have early help hub locality meetings, and that'd be a good place to have those sorts of conversations, not about individual families, but
No.
sort of helping with that understanding and reassurance and giving them a level of confidence. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Very quiet. Do you want to come in and say something, David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't think I've ever sat through a scrutiny session where I haven't come in and said something. I think that probably reflects on the fact that I wasn't necessarily needing to. Reflects well on the cabinet members clearly picked up the nettle, you know, and has got a good grasp in, you know, in the early part of the administration. I'm sure it's been a bit of a baptism of fire for the cabinet member, because it's still a really difficult period for us. This is evident through the, you know, the challenges that are in the performance report. But I think we can collectively take a good deal of confidence that everything that can be done is being done. I'm like you, Chair. I've seen various iterations of the performance report over the years. We obviously went through that that dip, you know, through, you know, during that period of moving from Paris to implementing WCCIS. But the product that we have got now, you know, is knocking into a cock's hat as far as I'm concerned. The products we've had in previous years, and we, you know, frankly, we were, you know, as you've said, we worked hard on those products in previous years, you know, going from a position of not really having any performance or management information at all. If we go back to the dark days of when we were in intervention in children's services, we're really proud of those developments over the years. But I think what we've got now is, you know, the fact that it's so forward looking in terms of that trend analysis, that early warning, as you described it, you know, that's leaps and bounds ahead again. So like you, Chair, I'm really pleased with that development. You know, I'm kind of wanting to say it's always good as we renew our senior management teams. You know, we've got a new head of children's services now, again had a baptism of fire, arriving in Swansea in the midst of COVID. But I think it's very evident from the work that's already been taking place that fresh, you know, those fresh eyes, that fresh energy, the new thinking, you know, is really purposeful renewal. And we very much need it, because, you know, times are still going to be tough for children, for families, our population, for our workforce, etc. So I think the work that that Julie as head of service and her senior management team have done to keep driving us forward, even during this, you know, these really difficult times, is you know, absolute huge credit to them. And we are a better children's service again for that input. So you know, they're probably my soapbox comments, Chair.
Before I better put the mic on. Obviously, you decided to go ahead with the WIC system. I'm not sure at the time, as it was coming in, that you were sure it was the right thing. But now that you're seeing the results coming out of it, I'm sure you are beginning to say, well, I'm glad we did it, because obviously you were struggling initially with it, and it was causing you major problems, I think. Oh, okay. So is that system still developing? Are you still using it to extract data, and or can you program it yourself to extract the data, or?
So we're still evolving the system. One of the strengths of that new system is that it allows you to develop it so that it works for your area. So what we do here may be slightly different to how they then modify it in another area. So we're still keen. So we're doing some further developments to the system now, and we're focusing at the moment on ensuring that the burdens on particularly the social workers are lightened in relation to inputting onto the system. So we're trying to make it leaner and more accessible and easier to manage from their perspective. And that's a big priority for us at the moment, which we're being supported to take forward.
So just for me to understand, you can interrogate the system to tailor your interrogations to what you require, as opposed to, say, perhaps a very highly rural area would need in different, I don't know. But
well, I guess what we can do is if we've got a particular theme in Swansea, and we want to pull, and we think, well, that's something we want to continue pulling the data out. As a good example for us would be children missing and exploited trafficked hub that we have. They may not have that particular type of setup in another local authority area, but we can pull that out and for specific to Swansea. The focus to begin with is making sure we can pull out the data that Welsh Government need for their annual returns, which may still be a challenge going forward, because if you want to develop the system, sometimes you have to pause some other things. But certainly we're continuing to take it forward, so we're shaping it so that it continues to support our practice in Swansea.
Sorry, Sue, you had a question?
Thank you. Just to say, the report is really very positive and a lot clearer. Just to clarify in my own mind, foster care with family contact, does the family extend to the grandparents as well, or is it just the immediate family that the contact is encouraged?
It will really depend on the individual circumstances of the children concerned. So we can, yes. And it can include brothers and sisters, and it can include aunts and uncles, but it really depends on the individual child and their circumstances. So everyone would be different, I would say.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you.
Anybody else got any other questions? Any other comments? In that case, the only other thing I will say about this report, and it is a little niggle, I must admit, if we could have the data for a graph and the graph on the same page. Because I can get easily confused if I'm not careful. That's what I'm saying, I think. But you have to be a bit careful when you're reading it at the moment in that respect. In that case, I will move on to item 8 on the work programme. If I can find it. I think, to be fair, I did have it here a second ago, but we've got it there, please. Liz, to be fair, give me so many bits of paper, I've just it again. Could be here so much, shouldn't it? Sorry, I knew it pulled it out somewhere. So basically, you've seen the programme, you've got it there in front of you. I don't know if you've got any questions at this stage. You've had a chance to have a look at it as well. The one thing I would say, both to the pair of you, if there's anything you specifically would like us to have a look at, then let us know and we'll see where we can build that in. Yeah.
Actually, sorry, I do have a couple of questions or comments, if I may.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. First of all, just a note, on the 1st of November, I'll be giving my apologies. I'm sorry about that. Second is that 5th of December, if I've looked at the right calendar, is that a Monday? Is that right? The meeting 5th of December. Yeah.
Sorry, it is, Mike. It is.
It is, yeah.
I think it was something that was forced on us because there's something else on the Tuesday.
Okay. And
okay.
Just a question of clarification. The January meeting, it includes child disability. I wondered, I mean, Julie mentioned earlier on about neurodiversity. Does it encompass that as well? Are we talking about physical disabilities, or the whole gamut of disabilities?
So the intention would be to look at the whole range of children with disabilities.
And the final question, just a question of clarification, the performance monitoring, does that include staffing issues as well, in terms of how it's going in terms of recruiting staff?
I would normally give an overview of commentary. Certainly I could speak. We do have a workforce report, the separate to this unit, that gives it a lot more detail, but I can certainly pull in key data from that in relation to the staffing overview, back vacancies and such like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was thinking, sorry, Paxton, I was thinking that not necessarily to have a full detailed report, but and whether other committee members agree with me, but to look at issues by exception, so if there are any particular challenges that you might be facing, for us to be aware of those.
I think Mike, we would be tending to look at the performance data to pick it out to there to see if we can see anything. As far as staffing is concerned, we certainly will always ask about supervision and the level of supervision. We will always be interested to know how many or what percentage of agency staff you got, because back in 2009, we had huge numbers of agency staff here who were basically foreign, and that was one of the major problems at that time. And up until now, it's been pretty good, up until before COVID anyway, in that sense, very few agency staff. And the other one, which we won't be the only scrutiny panel looking at, is sickness levels, of course, and the concerns around that. So I think those are the main areas in terms of staffing that we would be particularly interested in.
Yeah, certainly I can bring that data in. I do know that for agency staff, looking at the whole workforce of just about 650 FTEs, we have less than 2% agency staff at the moment across the whole workforce. And then not all of those are qualified social workers in terms of agency staff, because we have a need in particularly the Youth Justice Service. And those are the other data points we can certainly pull in that aren't already included in there. If I may, there was one thing I did omit to draw to scrutiny panel's attention in the performance report, which is around children that are placed in homes that are operating without registration. It's not, and what that means is they should be in a registered children's home or in a registered provision like a fostering, a foster carer. But because of the lack of available placements, we've had to create a place for them to live. And we then have to notify Care Inspectorate Wales of that provision through a formal notification process. And we have one child at the moment in Swansea that's in such a provision, and that's the provision that's just about to be registered. But it's something that I will include to continue in the report to have oversight of that. But at the moment, we're developing Wikis to be able to pull the data off automatically, so we're having to do it in a manual way at the moment. So, but I will include it as a feature and highlight it. But that may be something that you might develop an interest in going forward. It's particularly linked to the sufficiency duty challenges that we have as a local authority and the availability of placements for children and young people.
We've obviously got Dinant at the moment. We've had our problems there. Hopefully we're coming out of those. How many other homes are we running in?
So at the moment we've got, as you say, we've got Tinant that can take three children and people. We're looking just to register another. We've taken over a former council home that's called Tiddy. That will have one young person as an emergency. That's where the young person is at the moment. So we're looking to move them on. And then we've just purchased a property in Swansea that we're looking to register, but that probably will take a good 9 months. That'll be up to 3 children. They were looking to purchase another property, so potentially we could have 4 children's homes across Swansea in the next 12 months in total.
There are quite a large number, as I understand it, or relatively large number of residential homes in Swansea already being run by private providers. Obviously there are problems there in terms of non-profit making and the use of them. Do they cause you any concern in that sense, or I know we've wondered whether there's any concern from a policing point of view in particular in terms of missing persons for a while or whatever?
So it would be fair to say that it does create a level of demand within our service and within police and within health. So when other local authorities place their children in those residential homes, then generally we get notified because those children may go missing, or there may be other types of incidents. So it would be true to say that does place a demand on both health, education, police and social services resources. And there are some homes that we would choose not to place our children in because the location perhaps isn't right in relation to where that home is. So it's conversations that we'd like to have with Care Inspectorate Wales about their decision making around registration for some of those places that are in Swansea at the moment. But the locations that we're looking at would be quite different because we recognise that that's right in relation to having the best place for our children to be living in and a good quality of life as well.
We covered quite a large area then, I think, in that respect, didn't we? but that's fine. If you're happy with the with the work program in that sense, then fine. We've
Can
heard
I
the
just say,
comments.
sorry, I have raised my hand. I don't know if it's
Sorry,
working.
Sue, I can't see it, but
Yeah,
sorry.
just, you know, when Mike talked about the staffing levels, if we could have an item on what we're doing as a department for the well-being of the staff, so that that could be included as well.
I can reflect it in the that report that we've just, yeah, in terms of the around the staffing element, yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, so we'll see what comes out of that. And obviously recruitment has been a major problem everywhere across Wales at the moment. And if you're coping with that as things are compared with other councils, then that's going to be good. Okay, on that basis, then I will, unless there's any other more questions, close this meeting and say thank you very much, especially to Louise and Julie. Certainly, we look forward to going forward with these new reports and how they develop. And thank you very much. Thank you.